Stanley, Scuba, Sailing, and Adventures. Thank you for being here with me to log an entry in the travel journal. If this is your first time, hit that subscribe button. Today we'll be scuba diving Florida's Looe Key Mooring Ball 20. For those of you keeping score, this is dive number 14 in this 17-part series, Scuba Diving the Florida Keys. As soon as the dive started, I found this wonderful Goliath grouper right under the boat. He was extremely patient. He let me get really close. I took a lot of video. I took a lot of photographs. It was great. Most enjoyable for me as a photographer is when he would move to the side of the boat so I could get some of that direct sunlight on him. You can see here how close he is to the surface of the water. I'm down at about 10 feet and he was moving up and down in the water column and occasionally would swim right at me. Looe Key is a national marine sanctuary in the Florida Keys, and if you've been following the series, you know this is not my first time diving Looe Key on this trip. As you see here, I started with the Goliath grouper and immediately as I descended found a reef shark. This dive site is just incredible. Looe Key is actually a key, but only a small portion of it is above water, and that only at low tide. At least that's my understanding. I was extremely confused when I first heard of Looe Key. A friend of mine had invited me, and you probably see that early in the series, to meet up with them for some dives. And I was looking for Looe Key and very confused. So the dive shop that I dove with is actually on Big Pine Key. And as I mentioned, Looe Key is, for all intents and purposes, underwater. Nonetheless, spectacular dive site. Each dive here was a little different, and with most of the shallower reef dives in the Florida Keys greatly impacted by any wind or storm surge waves. I'm doing things a little backwards on this dive series, at least from the way I normally do things. I'm going to create an intro video and create a playlist for it at the very end. I'll pull out the charts and show you on the charts where the dive sites are in relation to the different keys. I'll also talk about the dive shops that I visited and the dive shops that I dove with. I visited, I think, if memory serves me, and I know I have it written down, I think 6, maybe 7 different dive shops. As I was coming into the Keys, I stopped at almost every dive shop that I knew by name and had heard of, and talked to them about the sites they visit and diving, etc. There's no reason that I chose certain dive shops and not others other than location. I heard good things about all of the dive shops for the most part in the Keys, and I'll go into that a little bit as well, and I'll share my personal experience with these different dive shops that I used. I did mostly shallow reef dives on this trip. I didn't have a dive buddy that came with me or came down to visit, so I'm always a little hesitant about doing the deeper wreck dives without diving with a buddy that I've been diving with before. I've had some really great experiences with random dive boat buddy, but again, I've had some that have been not so great. So in terms of deeper, more not really technical, but technical from a recreational standpoint, maybe you would say just deeper dives, deeper wreck dives, I tend not to do unless I already know my buddy. I really enjoy the Florida Keys, and I'm hoping to get back there next year and do some of the deeper wreck dives. I feel like that's a whole part of the Florida Keys I really haven't experienced. At least that I haven't experienced for a long, long time. I dove in Key West, I guess, about 25 years ago, and the reef was several miles offshore. I don't remember. It seemed like it was a long boat ride again 25 years ago. I don't remember the specifics. I do remember we did one wreck dive. It was a cable laying boat of some sort. It was pretty large, and that was in about 110 feet of water. And then we did a shallow reef dive, and I think they said it was like 7 Mile Reef, or it was 7 miles off from Key West. But I recall that all of the coral was smashed. There just wasn't much structure left at all, but there was a tremendous amount of marine life. Now I've done a little bit of research, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of diving that runs out of Key West anymore. If you know of some, let me know. I'd love to go back out to that same place just to see what's going on there. Maybe there's nothing there now. Maybe that's why they don't run dive operations to that location out of Key West. Again, maybe it's just something I didn't find. So if you're aware, drop me a note, let me know. This would be my last day of diving on this trip to the Florida Keys. And as I mentioned, this is dive 14 of that 17-part series. I have another 3 dives to do on this day, and that will conclude the series and the diving for this trip to the Florida Keys. I feel like I've identified most of these fish, and seeing as this is number 14 in the dive series, I hope I've provided enough fish identification that you can start to identify some of these fish on your own. That being said, if you see a fish and you feel like I haven't identified that fish previously, if in the comment you leave the time in the video where you see that fish, I'll do my best to give you the name for it. I mentioned this dive site by Mooring Ball 20. The dive sites in Looe Key are named by the mooring ball. There's a series of mooring balls, which is great because you don't have to drop anchor and smash things up. The dive site is shallow. It's set up with these finger-like zigzags that go back and forth. So inevitably, you end up turning around and going back by the boat or near the boat at some point. And I couldn't help but notice that Goliath grouper was still around. So of course, I felt compelled to spend a little more time. Some of the logistics of this dive, or metrics, I don't know, metrics, logistics, I'm not sure. Anyway, the dive started at about 9:40 in the morning, lasted just about 50 minutes. I recorded an average depth of 14 feet and a maximum depth of 25 feet. My dive computer reported a very comfortable average water temperature of 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this dive. I know I did.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.